In this video, we're taking a look at a quadruped hip abduction end range liftoff. Now, this is a great movement because what we're learning to do here is we're learning how to actively contract and move into what is considered end range hip abduction. I may have prescribed this as a movement to do straight after some pales rails work, where we've actually tried to kind of open up some potential workspace or some potential mobility. And this is a great movement to tag along to now learn how to actively concentrically contract into that range of motion. Even as a movement on its own away from some pales rails work, it's still going to be beneficial for you to actually build some strength really close to the sort of lateral aspect of the hip, an area in hip abduction where we don't often move into, and we need to learn how to get stronger in that range of motion. In terms of setup, what we're going to do here is we're going to set up in an all fours position, and we're going to set up with one leg out nice and straight. Now, when we set up, what we're going to find here is if I set myself across to the left kind of too far and I go to lift the leg, I want to make sure that I can actually, first of all, actually lift the leg. Pretty much I can't lift from here, but I also need to make sure that I'm not twisting and turning with my torso, and that the active range of motion and the movement is actually going to come from this lateral aspect of the hip and not potentially my pelvis or my trunk rotating. Okay, so really important that we set ourselves up initially where we're probably going to be our knee on top of the hip to begin with. And then we can assess from here by doing like a little half rep at a low intensity. Can I actually lift off here and just get the semblance of sort of a contraction and lift? I can to some degree. The range of motion is very small, so I'm happy that I'm close enough to my end range. If I was here and I could lift way up here and not really do that with very little effort, then I'm probably not close enough to my end range. So there's a nice little range that we need to be into. We need to go a little bit outside of our end range, but not so far out of our end range that we're not going to get any benefit from this movement. We need to have to irradiate to really force a maximal contraction from all this tissue on the lateral aspect of the hip, okay? So setting up from here, get your all fours position. Your hand position is really important as well because you're going to try and use this left arm. I've got my left side here. This left arm is going to be really important for this kind of contraction across your trunk to make sure you're nice and stable. You're going to feel lots of tension around your trunk and tension from this left hand when you go to lift. So bear that in mind. Spine is relatively neutral. Core, you need to make sure is nice and tight. We're going to go through that irradiation process and get nice stiffness through the trunk. But pelvic position, the idea would be here, if I show you from the side, pelvic position, I maybe have a little bit of an anterior tilt where I'm trying to get my tailbone up towards the ceiling, and that's going to help me really isolate this lateral aspect of the hip. And as I said, when we lift, we want to make sure that nothing is really rotating or moving from the rest of the body. So that's where our radiation process is going to help us. So that process, remember, you're going to take a big inhale, pack it into your lower abdomen, and increase the level of internal tension in every single muscle in the body. Your arms, your pecs, your back, your legs, and especially all the musculature around the side of the hip that we're going to get to move in a second. Get that tension first. Now very slowly, peel your foot off the ground, contract everything on the outside of the hip, and lift slowly as high as you can and hold. 2, 1, slowly control down under tension. Don't just let it flop down to the ground. Now exhale and relax. We're treating each one of these as a close to max effort, considered your greatest, safest max effort for today. You might get a bit of a cramp. If that is the case, I'm going to get you to back off in terms of the intensity, but you should be able to work on this with almost every single fiber of your being, your maximum effort that you can give me for today. Let's go through another rep. So inhale, irradiate, create that internal tension. Get tension on the lateral side of the hip first, so those muscles that are going to lift the leg, and then peel the leg off the floor. Hold. Make sure nothing else has moved. Slowly back down and exhale. As I said, a few things that we're going to make sure we look out for. We don't want to do any lazy reps. We don't want to do any reps where we're sort of like relaxed with the upper body, because then when we go to move, we're suddenly going to turn, rotate, and it's not going to come from that sort of tissue on the lateral side of the hip. Okay? As I said at the start, making sure that you're actually set up close to your end range. You might find this gets better with time, that you can actually start shifting to that side, and keeping that level of tension in the body is really going to be beneficial to identify where the movement is actually coming from. Okay, so probably plenty of questions based on all of that I just gave you there, so be sure to leave them in the comments below. Be sure to like the video if you got some value from it, and if you want to see more content like this on a regular basis, be sure to subscribe to the page. All right, thanks for the moment, and I'll see you soon.